call Michael Woodhouse.
Mr Speaker, I think on very important legislation on matters of safety, I'm sure every member of the House, when considering the bill, wants to know that when it's passed, things will be better, that the legislation is actually going to make a difference. And this is definitely one of those bills. We want to know that there will be a reduction in deaths and injuries on our roads when this bill becomes law. Now, we've heard that there are members, right through the readings of this, that while they're generally supportive of the bill, if they were in government, they'd be doing things differently. That's the nature of democracy. And there's been some quite rigorous debate in previous readings and in the committee stage challenging parts of the bill. But I would have thought that by now the opposition might have been a little more generous in their support of the bill, particularly given their total inertia in their 9 years in power. The member, Ms Fenton, might have spent about 30 seconds pretending to be generous and saying there were some good aspects of the bill, but then about 9.5 minutes bagging the various things that she thinks we should have done and didn't, or did and shouldn't have. And that was generally the theme of a rather disingenuous contribution by our members on the other side. And in fact, they're now going to introduce a members' bill to reduce the blood alcohol concentration from 0.08 to 0.05. Well, I trust that they'll simultaneously stop their silly nonsense on Members' Day and the sort of filibustering that's been going on Members' Days, like the disgraceful display.
Point of order. The Honourable Rick Barker.
Point of order. This member sometime recently raised a point of order talking about the content of third reading speeches and required another member to be focused on narrowly on the third reading, and was very disappointed to hear that the previous speaker said that they would entertain someone referring to matters not strictly within the content of the bill, but other matters referred to. And I've sat through quite a considerable amount of the debate on this bill before and have not heard any mention of this particular subject the member's going for. All I'm asking the member to do is to be consistent with his own requests.
I thank the member for those comments, and the member is right, and I'm sure that the member will come back to the contents of the third reading, which is the report back from the Select Committee, but 8 minutes to try and do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and consistent with the Speaker's ruling, I'm playing exactly by the rules as laid down in that earlier decision. And I don't actually understand if there is such a danger to public safety by not reducing the blood alcohol concentration to 0.05, and if the sky will fall in because we don't do that, why would the opposition actually be satisfied with just an infringement notice regime, as they have suggested? Because their distinction in penalties acknowledges that the risk is actually lower with a lower blood alcohol concentration, and that's what the 300 or so studies that they consistently quote actually showed. The more alcohol, the greater the risk. No real rocket science there. But what those studies did not show, and what the research that's going to be done following this bill being passed, is answer the following question. How many deaths or serious injuries are caused in New Zealand by drivers who have a BAC between 0.05 and 0.08 where that driver is at fault? None of the research has answered that question. It's fundamental to the policy decision, and when we gather that information, that will enable us to make sensible, evidence-based policy decisions. Maybe, as Mr Lees Galloway says, it will in the future go to 0.05, but at least it'll do so on evidence, not lots of arm waving from an opposition that didn't do anything when they had the opportunity. And in the meantime, lives will be saved when this bill is passed. Lives will be saved because the blood alcohol concentration for younger drivers will go to zero. Lives will be saved because recidivist drink drivers will have a zero BAC. Lives will be saved because of the use of alcohol interlocks, and lives will be saved when the driving age goes from 15 to 16 and it's a harder pathway to full licensing. So safety will be improved by that and the many other matters contained in this bill. And rather than hang my head in shame, as Professor Selman might suggest we do, I'm holding my head up very high. This is an excellent progress. I congratulate the Minister. I thank the officials and the select committees, and I commend the bill.
Cool.